Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cube Vanguard. Now, you've probably noticed something about me today, which is a little bit different than usual. No, I haven't lost 10 pounds or gotten 10 years younger, but I've put on some different clothes. So, yeah, I had a traumatic experience. I can't even pronounce it. Experience this week. Yeah, and it was tough, and I got over it, but it was very difficult. So I wanted to give people a little bit of advice on how to deal with this. So it's called post-pandemic wardrobe syndrome. And what it basically is that during the pandemic, most of us just worked from home. We never went out. In fact, we didn't do anything. And we got kind of used to wearing basically whatever we wear in the old days on days off. And the problem is humans are creatures of habit. And so basically for years, I haven't worn a tie and a suit. So what happened this week? Well, my wife told me that she'd gotten some tickets to an event and it was great, whatever. And I normally look at an event just in case, see how long it's going to be and whether I'm going to like it or not. And if I'm not going to like it, then I just kind of, breathe deeply, whatever. And I looked through it, looked pretty good, no problems. But then I noticed one thing: dress formal. And I didn't even know what that meant anymore. So with utter terror, I opened up my closet and I went in. In fact, you can't even go in. It's so jammed. It's it's like a jungle. But I did find my pre-pandemic formal clothes. Of course, the problem is that 90% of them don't fit anymore because one of the issues of the pandemic was that you sat around doing nothing. I tried to do sports and I did, but the kitchen and the fridge are really close, and that continues to this day when you work from home. Like when you used to be at work, you have to go to a cafeteria, you have to go, spend some money, whatever. And sometimes you're too lazy to do that. Whereas when you're working from home, no one's stopping you from going to the kitchen. I've tried all sorts of stuff. I tried to tape my door. I tried to put an alarm on the fridge. Literally, I did that once. They sell them. And of course, being an IT person, I just disarm it after a while when I get hungry. So, okay, I went into my wardrobe and, got hit by extreme depression because some of the stuff, well, most of the stuff I couldn't put on anymore. And I had the next day to go to this formal thing. So luckily I found a couple of things, which still fit. But then I ran into the next problem. I hadn't tied a tie in years. Like the last time, so I'd forgotten how to do it. And so luckily there's Google now. On Google and tried different variations, but it turns out that my whole life I wasn't tying a tie properly. And I didn't know that. And then to tie it properly, it didn't work out that well. It was worse. So I finally figured out how I used to tie a tie, and I did it. And you can see it's not really correct, but hey, it'll pass. And my jacket's there. So there you go. Now I'm not as bad as some people. I know, some people are really hit by this syndrome. You'll see them going to the bank machine in pajamas. So they can't even get out of their pajamas, right? And of course, then that's, if they sleep in their pajamas. There's some people who don't sleep in pajamas, and there's been some instances with that too. So it is a real thing, and so I suggest that maybe once a week you should just put on your best clothes, put a tie on, even if it's for old time's sake, remembrance. Just do it, and then if you have to go to something formal, you can put it back on. I remember the days when I worked as an IT administrator, and I had to wear a jacket and a tie, and you'd be under tables fiddling with network cables and stuff, and you'd be in a jacket and tie, right? And then there were horror stories of, we used to have shredders and fax machines, there's still shredders around, and it would get caught, and so these are all old memories for me. I think the younger generation have no idea of what this was like. Anyways, enough of the wardrobe scenario. I'm working on that. I'm getting back to pre-pandemic shape and all that, just slow. And working from home is a challenge because it's just easy to become very casual about everything. Just everything, right? And of course, there is the fridge. So we have to watch these things. Anyways, what am I talking about today, apart from the wardrobe situation I faced this week, which I got out of in the end? I'm going to talk today about Talos. Talos or Talos, I don't know how you pronounce it, but this is an immutable operating system for, it's Linux, but it's for Kubernetes specifically, right? It's wonderful. Michael Cade has actually done a post on this, or I think in his 90 days of DevOps, he did one. Really interesting. I'm just jumping into it lightly today, just to show how you can get up quickly and play around with it, whatever. And we will do that today. Now, I'm not going to build a VM or a set of VMs for this, which you can do. I have done that in the past, but I haven't actually talked about it. It's not complicated. It's just a little bit different from the way you normally do things. But if you just want to play around with it to get used to it, you can do it in Docker, right? And so, as you know, I got a Windows laptop. I've got Rancher Desktop where you can turn on Docker if you want. You don't have to turn the Kubernetes on. And Windows Subsystem for Linux, of course. And with that is enough. So without further ado, let's move over to our desktop and see what we've got. So first of all, always go to documentation. We always do that. And as you can see, it's as simple as doing a curl command in your Windows Subsystem for Linux terminal, and it'll install the Talos CTL, okay? Talos CTL utility, which you use to do this, okay? So I've already done that. That's very simple. You shouldn't have any problems. And if you have any problems, I found there's a lot of people who have been playing around with this. There are a lot of solutions, even in Windows Subsystem for Linux, which is really great because when Windows Subsystem for Linux first came out, no one was kind of using it. And so if you had a problem, you didn't know what to do. So there's a lot more people using it now, so it's good. Now you also have to download kubectl if you don't have that, kubectl, whatever you want to call it. I've got it installed already, as you can imagine. All right, so let's go over to our terminal now, and we shall take a peek. So first of all, you have to remember, unless you've installed Docker, I guess, inside of your Windows Subsystem for Linux, you'd have to have Docker running. You have to have something running there, obviously, to be able to have these containers come up. The simplest solution, I think, is just install Rancher Desktop, okay? Rancher Desktop comes with its own Kubernetes. It's K3S version. I talk about it a lot. I love it. But it also has just Docker. If you just want the Docker, it's Moby Docker, so it's not the Docker from Docker, but it's pretty much the same thing. And it's a wonderful, if you don't have a lot of time and you don't have tons of resources to learn, this is perfect for you just to keep you going, right? And as you can see here, which I really like, is it keeps you up to date. So it's automatically checking for me every time I log in, and look, there's a new one that's come out and just downloaded it. And so I could restart now, but then that would be sitting here after talking about my wardrobe, so we won't do that. We'll leave it as is. What I will point out, though, is you can see here it says Kubernetes deactivated, okay? And I'm just using Container Engine Moby, so I'll show you where that is set. Takes a second to come up, and it comes up on the other screen. I'll pull it over. Okay, so here, obviously, all you do is you disable Kubernetes. And as I said before, you can actually have different versions here. So you can go back and use older versions of Kubernetes if you want. And so that's disabled, that's fine. And then the container engine, you can either use container D or Moby. So in this case, I'm using Moby because that's what Talos works with. As always, my Windows Subsystem for Linux, I have integrated with my Ubuntu, okay? So check mark that, and you're all set to go. So that means you've basically got Docker running underneath the hood, and now I can go and create my little Talos cluster. All right, so the instructions couldn't be simpler. Mind you, Talos can get more complicated because remember, it's an immutable operating system, which means that anything you're going to set up, anything you're going to do, it has to be done beforehand, as I understand it. So I fiddled with this a bit with Flatcar. I don't remember if I did a post on Flatcar, and it's a learning curve, okay? So you have to do all these injections and things before it actually loads because it's immutable, which is wonderful. But the other issue is that there hasn't been really one, I'd say, distribution out there that's sat there and hasn't changed. So CoreOS is still there, I believe, Red Hat, but that's Red Hat, so I think there's probably licensing involved. There was K3OS from Rancher, which was immutable, but that's gone away. There's something new, which I've just learned about from Rancher. I can't remember the name, but it's another one. I'll look that one up. And of course, there's Talos as well. So a lot of people are playing with this idea to have an immutable operating system, and which is preferable, but it is a learning curve. And of course, you don't want to waste a lot of time learning one and then it dies because no one's supporting it, right? So that's the only thing. So basically, you want to play around with it. Very simple. We've installed it. Let's make certain that it's actually there. So Talos CTL. Not found. Oh, because I didn't I didn't type the correct thing. Good. That would have been annoying. I mean, I would have just done that curl command, but still. Okay, so there it is. It's installed. If you want to read exactly what you can do with it, there's a lot. But we're going to create a basic cluster, okay? Which is as simple as, if you're lazy, pressing the copy on the website, and we will just post that in here and see what happens. So theoretically, this is going to go and talk to that Moby Docker, which is running in Rancher Desktop. And it looks like it's working because it hasn't complained yet, okay? So it's going to build that, and then I believe it's going to automatically add the context, right, to my local kubeconfig file so that I can, and make it default, so that I can immediately log in or interact with my cluster. So we'll see if that happens or not. But I like the fact that the quick start is very much a quick start. A lot of times I find there's so much out there in the Kubernetes world, And we have so little time that you sometimes just want a very quick and simple start to get in there, look around, see if it's for you, see if you can really use it for something, and then not go forward with it if you don't need it. Some of the solutions, of course, are very, I wouldn't say very complicated, but they require more time and effort. And of course, it's very annoying. You put a lot of time and effort into it. I mean, it's always good to learn, but then to find you're not using it. So I like the fact this has a nice little quick start. And let's look at some of the other commands while we're waiting here. I will move this over to the side and watch it. So cluster create, there we go. You can explore the Talos API commands, Talos dashboard nodes. There's a dashboard, obviously. And most importantly, Talos cluster destroy. So you always want to do that because otherwise these things will hang around. So let's keep this going. Yeah, so also there are advanced guides here. Now, I will tell you one thing I've already done, but I haven't created a post about it yet or a video about it, is I did use their Proxmox instructions. So as you know, big problems with VMware now, there's no more a free ESX version. And so a lot of home lab people or people just learning are going to be basically faced with a bit of a dilemma. You know, what do I use? So it's nice when people like Talos, whatnot, create an actual guide. So let's see if we can find it here. I used it the other day and it was pretty straightforward. Let's see, there's how-tos. I think you just do a search in here somewhere. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Proxmox. And I found this to be very, very, very simple. I can't find the instructions now. They're in here somewhere. They're so bare metal platforms. No, we want a virtualized platform. There it is. It's hiding in here. Okay, so there you go. You can see them. Hyper-V, KVM, Proxmox, Vagrant. Now, for those of you who don't know, Vagrant is a kind of mini, it's not a hypervisor, but you can like create clusters with things in it and virtual machines. VMware and Zen. So that's Zen. So that's not the other hypervisor that's gaining a lot of popularity now. The XC, I can't remember them all, but it's the other one that's really popular with Proxmox. That's just Zen, the normal Zen system, I'm imagining. And Hyper-V. So I might try the Hyper-V as well. I've got a little Hyper-V I've set up. And it looks like, by the way, Hyper-V is coming back because in Windows 2025, they've actually put in some effort. There was a rumor that Microsoft was tired of Hyper-V, pushing everyone to Azure, but they haven't done that, obviously. And pretty smart that they haven't. Okay, guess what? Our cluster is finished. So, yeah, getting over here, Proxmox, I found these to be, they not only have the instructions, they have a video too. Excellent. And I went through these and set it up, and I had no problems at all. Everything worked, okay? So it was quite nice. And they even had, for my Synology, a part about the Synology CSI, how to set that up for storage. All right, let's bring over our cluster and take a look. So we waited for a bit, and in the end, this came up. There we go. And it's giving you some information right away after it's built. So you've got, by default, 2 nodes. You've got a control plane and a worker. So that's by default. I didn't tell it to do anything. Obviously, you can control that. You could have more nodes. You'd have probably more control planes and have high availability and all that. I just haven't looked into it. But just giving you some basic information. And it even says provisioner Docker. So I imagine you can probably use something else for it too. Anyway, so let's just see if this works. I'll use my K get nodes and see if it brings anything up. And it should bring up the exact same thing we just saw up there. And it did. Boom. All righty. So let's see what we've got running on the control in the Kube system. Always good to see what's in there. Okay. Oh, get what? Would be nice if I did the command correctly. Get pods. Let's see the pods running there. And okay, so it's using Flannel as a network CNI. Core DNS, of course, is running. And Kube scheduler, Talos. I like the way I put Talos in there to remind you what it is. Pretty normal, basic. Got your Kube proxy in there for both of the nodes. So let's see if we can run something. Now, keep in mind, because it's immutable, these guys are all obviously thinking about security. So I bet you it's not going to be that simple to run stuff sometimes. Because remember, one of the important things is never to run containers as root and run them as users. So you can see that having issues. You can't run privileged containers a lot of times in some of these things. So let's just try to. I think Nginx by default is privileged, needs privileged. I'm not certain, but let's do krun Nginx and image Nginx. And let's just see. What did I tell you? So, warning, would violate pod security restricted latest. So, Nginx must set security context Allow privileges escalation. Okay, so that's what I suspected. Must set security context, run as non-root true. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here. But it does say it's been created. So it's just a warning. Okay, let's get pods and see. So maybe it's just warning. So it is running, so that's fine. But I like the fact that it's telling you, obviously, about some of the issues that can take place that you're, in fact, let's just go into that and see. So we're going to do a K, XE, go into the pod and check what it's running as. I was using Docker, so this thing, Docker commands and kubectl commands can be very simple, but they're different. So you have to be careful. One second, I just press tab. Okay. If you press tab, it takes its time looking. All right. So I don't think it's got bash, but it's got shell. Okay, so we're in here, and let's just see what we are running at. Oh, there's no PS in here. Well, that is interesting. So I can't say, who am I? Let's do that. Root. Okay, that's good enough. So as you know, containers don't always contain all the binaries, right? Because that's part of the beauty of them. They can't contain only what they need. And so PS was there. I normally do a PS and see the processes and see who they're running as. Of course, if I can't do that, I can always do who am I? And I am root. So root is root. So that is a privileged container, obviously. And that's good to know. So it worked. That's fine. So there you go. Talos. I set up Talos very quickly. It's running. And on top of that, I have an immutable system. Now, how do I prove that it's immutable? Well, I have to figure that out. Let me just think. Well, I imagine that if I try to, well, it's in Docker, so this is the problem. So yeah, okay, that's something for next time. But it is allowing me to run as root the Nginx. That's fine. So now let's kill it since we've had our fun. So Talos CTL cluster destroy. Now imagine if I gave it a name, I could have multiple clusters, right? I'm assuming. Since there's only one, it's going to find it right away and kill it, and it is gone. Okay, wonderful. So, yeah, interesting. Would I use it for any of my stuff as opposed to K3S? I don't know. You'd have to learn more about it. In fact, going back just to see on the documentation, if we look at the introduction, it'll tell us what is Talos, and let's just see. So it's immutable, it's atomic, it's ephemeral, it's minimal, it's secured by default, and it's managed via single declarative configuration file and gRPC API. Okay. All right. So Talos having less offers more. So that's another thing too. Is remember, if you're creating like a K3S, normally I create an Ubuntu VM. Well, that's a whole Ubuntu operating system, right? Just for the containerization. Of course, the other thing you'd want to have here is an operating system which they've cut out everything you don't need and just everything for containerization. That's what this does. So a lot less resource use. But I think going forward, we'll try this. I might start liking this. I haven't played around with it enough. And then perhaps one day I will replace K3S. We'll have to see. Okay, that's enough for this week. Maybe next week I'll come back and do some more of this Talos. We'll see. But I certainly will not be wearing a jacket and tie again because I realized how much I never liked wearing these when I worked. All right, we'll see you next week on the Cube Vanguard.